Breakfast with Bob.
Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're brought to you by PTO, the Pro Triathletes Organization, by Amp Human, VeloFix, Normatec, Form Goggles, You Can, and of course our Challenged Athletes Foundation. My next guest, 1994 Ironman World Champion, Ironman Hall of Famer, ITU World Champion, Mr. Greg Welch joins us. How you doing, Welchie?
I'm good, but more importantly, speed golf partner. Come on, bro. We've been
Exactly. You know what I was thinking today? I could put on a speed golf tournament, right? Because people go off one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
We could do it and follow the rules and have some fun.
Even with this old guy right here and how slow he is these days, I think I can still be competitive at that.
Because you're a golfer. You're a really good golfer.
No, I wouldn't say really good golfer, but it's okay.
I remember years ago when we were doing the speed golf tournament and we were following you. I was with one of the golf pros. And I'm like, what? Because in terms of our guys, you're a good golfer. And I said, Greg's a pretty good golfer. And he goes, yeah, he's okay. I said, well, how long do you think it would take him to become like really good? He said, like scratch or like be able to play with the top guys? Yeah. He goes, only about 10 years or so. Like 10 years. I mean, that's a brutal sport. It is really, really hard to get. You can get good, but to get great, that's another deal.
You just got to work on it. It's like triathlon, you got to work hard, but, you definitely got to have a knack, for golf. Most golfers, are really good from a young age. Right. And then it's not a very low percentage of golfers that come into it late in life are successful, but there's a few, but not too many.
So for you, Greggy, growing up in Australia, what were your sports growing up?
Oh, it's amazing. Growing up in Australia is just incredible because you're just surrounded by water. So mostly water sports. I took up surfing when I was 3 years old. My grandfather bought me my first foam surfboard with a fin in it when I was 3. So that was our first little thing that we did. And in Australia, you all have to learn how to swim at school. Yep. So swimming, was a part of it. So swimming and surfing was right there. But I started playing rugby league at 5 years of age. So I played 10 straight years. We won the premiership one time. I started moving into tennis when I was about 10. Only played that for about a year. But I always went to tennis with mum, because she was at the courts, during the week. And if we had a day off school or whatever, we'd go with her. And then I went into squash. Squash was where I played at a high level. I played as a semi-pro, and I was right up there playing, A grade and just below the top guys in Australia. So that was a lot of fun. That's where I got my competitiveness. But I was in primary school where I actually started running on the track, and in 5th grade, I remember the coach put me in the 800, and I was like, okay, I didn't know what I was doing, but every afternoon at football practice, they'd make us do 2 laps of the oval, and I would always lap everyone. So he goes, I'm going to put you in the 800, and I won it in 5th grade, and I was only 3'6", I was knee high to a grasshopper.
Right.
And so from then on, I love cross country, and that's how I started.
So were you running cross country through high school then?
Yeah, so I ran cross country in high school. I finished 4th in the state championship one time, and then I sort of went downhill from there because I didn't really train that much because we moved. So I had to commute an hour and a half to school on 2 trains and 1 bus. So it took me an hour and a half to get to school, an hour and a half to get home. So there really wasn't much time for training.
When did you find the sport of triathlon?
I found it in 1985 when my buddy Richard Walker we were in the same surf club together, Cronulla, and he was going off to do a triathlon. I was like, what's a triathlon? He's like, yeah. Why don't you come and watch me? So I was like, okay, I'll come down because it was a local event, but it was about 13 kilometers away from my home. So I ran there to watch him race, and then I was so psyched. He was going to drive me home after it. He actually won the race, and I was so psyched I ran home. I did like a 26K run that day, and the very next day, I went and bought a bike.
What was your first race?
My first race was the Lake Illawarra Triathlon 1985. 1 mile swim, 36 minutes. 36K on the bike, probably near to last. And I ran from, I think it was 600th place into 95th place overall.
So you knew you just needed to work a little bit on that swim bike stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it was funny in the swim, Bob. I got out of the water and it was full of jellyfish that day. So I was like stung, from face all the way down to the toes. So it was disgusting. No, big ones. I mean, like 12-inch.
Man of war type of things.
No, they would kill you. But these big jellyfish. So anyway, I was just numb, running out of the water. I was cramping on the way to the bike. I had to sit down, put my shorts on and everything. I got overtaken. But it was fun to look back at.
When did you realize, okay, I'm pretty good at this sport and maybe I should be doing more of it?
All right. So in 1989, just a few years after, starting the sport. Actually, no, let me wind back. 1988, 1987 was my first Kona. It was my first Ironman in Australia at Foster.
Right.
And I competed because the guy that actually got me into the sport, Richard Walker, he had passed away. Oh. He was 3 days short of his 21st birthday. And Richard and my other friend Peter Brunker and I, we had vowed to do this Ironman Foster together. So we were training, doing all these rides and stuff. And Richard went off to a race, and 400 meters into the swim, he put his hand up, and he was leading the swim. He was one of the best swimmers I'd ever seen in my life. He put his hand up. He reached out for help, and he had a cardiac arrest and passed away on the way to hospital. So Peter
young guy, how old?
3 days short of his 21st birthday.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so we had planned to do it together. So Peter and I went on to do Foster, and we just wanted to finish, right? We trained pretty well for it. And at that time I was working 6 days as a builder, 6 days a week.
I was going to say, you're a construction guy.
Yeah, I was working 6 days a week, and because I had, good incentives to work the weekend and whatever. And so, but I was, getting up and riding my bike at 4:30 in the morning till 6:30. Then I'd drive to work, be at work by 7 and whatever. And we did it. But what I didn't realize is that in that race that day at Foster, there was 7 spots available for Kona. And we didn't even really think about that, but I ended up running off the bike about 20 or 30th place or something off the bike into 3rd, and I got a qualifying spot.
You came to Kona. Your first time out, really? Wow. What was that Kona experience like?
It was awesome. I was 45th overall. I want to say I did 9 hours. Yeah, 9 hours and 45 minutes. So in that time, Bob, you probably remember, but it was on your times that you requalified to come back. And then after that year, it was like top 5 in your age group and you got to come back. So from then I just kept on, qualifying every year. But it was in 1988, to answer your question, that I actually felt like I had a chance in the sport because Stephen Foster, he was like the Australian guy that came and he won Bud Light, Chicago or something like that against all the top guys, against Mark and Dave and Pig and Melina and Tinley. And he came back to Australia and raced the week after. And I won the race in Lake Macquarie and he got second. And we're like, oh my gosh, So from that day, it was that day, that I knew that there was going to be something there.
So I remember 89 and nobody knew who you were, right? And here's Dave and Mark, they're having this epic race. And you're running your way into 3rd place. You remember them? Because there was huge entourage around them. You must have seen these guys as you had like the best seat in the house.
I have no memories of them at all.
Really?
Nope. They were in a different zip code. They were 20 minutes ahead.
20 minutes up, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. They were almost 2.5 miles in front of everyone else at the end of the race. So I have no recollection of them at all.
Wow.
All I remember of that race is I was still riding the first bike I ever had, and it was so sloppy. It was aluminium, and I had a pair of Zip. What were they? The tri-spokes.
Yeah.
They were made the 1500s, and they were just beautiful wheels at the time. So that was the only thing that looked good on my bike. But I got off the bike. I don't know what position, like 40th or something like that. Yeah. and ran into third. But how I ran into third was, passing Tinley at around about 6 miles to go, passing Paulie Kiru. Then I had my sights set on Kenny Glah. So I was coming down Palani, and I could see Kiru. I passed him at the top of the hill, and at the bottom of the hill, there was Kenny Glah. It was hilarious because he had like 100 yards on me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm getting to, I didn't even know what position I was in, Bob.
Right.
So I come down the bottom of the hill and I see Kenny, so I just start sprinting. Just like a rookie, right? So I start sprinting and I overtake him, and he gave me a look. He just looked across with that squirmy little moustache of his, and he's like, "Who the hell are you?"
I'm the guy in third. That's who I am.
Yeah, I know. So I passed him, got across the line, 8 hours, 32 minutes and 16 seconds. Yeah. Kenny Glah was 10 seconds behind, and Paulie Kiru, another 10 seconds behind that.
Wow. And
okay.
So you're on, yeah.
Here's what I remember from that race clearly. The day after the race, they always had the press conference. On the stage, you were the host, and you said straight away, "Who are you? And where do you come from?" And all I know about you is you're a construction worker. So that's what I remembered, and I had to have a good laugh at that because I was sitting next to two guys on the stage that demanded the attention of the triathlon world because they gave us the greatest race in history.
Right. It was very special.
Yeah.
And so then, but the following year, so you're 89, you get third at Kona. In 1990, you win the ITU World Championship at Disney World. And I don't think even though you had gotten third in Kona, it's not like people were going, Greg Welch is going to win the World Championships here. There was a lot of big names there.
Yeah, there was a lot of big names. No, I mean, everyone was there that had to be there, but it just fell into my hands because I love racing in hot and humid conditions. Yep. My body thrived on that. No good in the cold weather, of course. So when we were down in Orlando, not a lot of people know this, but 5 weeks beforehand, I'd actually separated my shoulder, my AC joint, third degree separation. So I was up in Canada at a World Cup race with Brad Bevan and the Australian team and whatever. So anyway, I couldn't swim for 2 weeks, go down to Florida, with only a couple of weeks of swim training under my belt. But we were training pretty well at that time. And, get off the bike. The bike was a bit of a draft fest. I got to admit that. It was just ridiculous. And then when we got on the run, it just like you and I, Bob, run and huddle running along the golf course in the mornings playing our speed golf. It was all on a golf course.
Yes.
And that's what I thrive on. It was a cross-country run. So I ran, all off the bike pretty much together except for Rob Mackle and a few others were off the bike a little bit ahead. And Mackle was the last guy that I ended up passing to get into the lead. So he was in first place for a long time and get into the lead. Brad's in second, Stephen Foster in third. We sweep it 1, 2, and 3 in Florida in the second year of the World Championships. And Rob Mackle's one of my best friends to this day.
Does he still give you crap? You give him crap about that? We
rarely talk about it. We just talk when we fix roofs and, do all that sort of crap at his house.
So then when you take second in Kona in 91 to Mark Allen, then you're the guy. You're the guy who's going to knock Mark off. I remember we did a photo shoot with you and Mark leading into 90. Actually, I think it was leading into 92. And then 93, you got injured, right? And you couldn't race after taking second in 91. You couldn't race. 93, you were injured and couldn't race.
Yeah. So 91, I really thought I had a good chance that day, and I still see shots on social media. There's one really good shot with Wolfgang Dietrich, Mark, and myself, and then because it was always Wolfgang and Rob off the front, and then we'd catch Mackle and Dietrich, and then we'd dust them, on the run, of course, but. Right. But then I saw this one shot of Mark and I just stretching out along the Leaky Drive because when we used to finish up at the Kona Surf, which is now the Sheridan, 7 miles out of town, you had that hill to get out of, and then along a leaky drive. So we were shaded for about 6-7 miles before we actually got into the real heat.
Right.
So Mark and I were stretching it out in 91, and it was too fast for me, but I held it, right? And that was my mistake. So by the time that we got to the top of Palani Hill, he had about 100 yards on me, and I was toast. All I had to do was hang on for second, and I did, but it was a mistake. 92, had a good year, but unfortunately I'd sort of burnt myself out a little bit in Colorado. I had a little bit of a hole in my colon by dehydrating. I was up in Boulder, Colorado, and training really, really hard, and ended up, having a colonoscopy, and so it was a little hard to sit on the bike seat that year. We'll go by that one. 93 Duathlon World Championships 2 weeks before Kona. I thought it was my last hard hit out. Go off and win that down in Dallas, Texas. Come home the very day later, one day before I'm leaving for Kona. On my way home from a swim set up at University of California, San Diego, I'm riding along La Costa Avenue on my way home, just doing a little bit of a time trial, and a car turned right in front of me, and I hit the hood of the car, went flying over the car, ended up in the ER, and went to Kona the very next day on a set of crutches, and I badly sprained medial collateral ligaments in my left knee that I would have to rehab, for about 3 months after that.
Nobody wants to go when you're that fit, coming off Duathlon World. Nobody wants to go and watch Ironman, right? But you learned a few things by watching Ironman that year, didn't you?
Yeah, you know it too well. I think you and I have had this conversation many times. So I was given the opportunity to sit in the NBC car and do a little commentary, and for Lisa Lax, as she was the producer and director of the show back then, and gosh, she was amazing. We miss her. She was so nice. So I got to go out in one of the Ford Mustangs and, get sunburnt. But I did get to look at the race and how it unfolded, and how Mark, won his races, and how smart he was to sit back and just, watch the race unfold in front of him. So that was, something that I learned from for sure. So 93 was a good learning year, and that was the year I think that Paulie Kiru pushed Mark.
Right, he got second that year, and then so Paulie was the guy going into the 94 race saying, hey, I'm going to run, 245 off the bike, and this is my year. But that year you were probably as dedicated as you'd ever been to getting to Kona and being fit and ready and not distracted, right? Was that, you seemed really, that was the year that you were totally focused on that race.
There was a lot that went on in 93. So, I got married. Then straight after that, I was rehabbing, from like October, November, December, January. January, I had to go back down to Australia and race in the short series on a bum knee, Ended up finishing second in the series like I always did to Brad Bevan, because he was just the master. He was just the king of the short course racing. And then that year in 94, I knew I was going to be, dedicated back to my craft. So what I had to do was make sure that my knee was right, first of all. So I did the races in Australia because I was, contractually committed to those. And then I came back and I cut my season a little bit short. So I really needed to go and do an Ironman. I spoke with my agent, Murphy Reinschreiber, and he was like, Greg, you've got to test this out at a longer distance, and, just make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself going forward, because we wanted the longevity, of a career, instead of just going out and being silly and, overworking it and prolonging the injury. The problem was we actually chose Japan Ironman because of the heat and humidity, and I'd done it twice before, and I absolutely loved racing in Japan. I went there, and guess who turned up? Paulie Kiru.
Oh,
and I'm
Paulie showed up.
No, why? But, out of everybody, either Mark or Paulie were the guys that were on top. It just so happened that Mark in 94 was taking the year out. I think that he and Julie were taking the year out to be with Mats, their son.
Yeah, baby, yeah.
And, baby. And He's a lovely young man. And so I go there and race Paulie Kieran. And Paulie and I, we always have a good laugh. But, yeah, he pushed me there that day. I think I went like 8:07 or something like that. Yeah, 8:07 it was. And on a, it's just hot and humid. You've got to run across the top of the rice paddies, and it was a great day, and I ended up winning, and it was great. We had a great race together. He got second, and that pushed me. And by the end of that race, I knew that if I just had a good rest, got my knee strong again, I'd be okay. But coming home after that race, Bob, I did take a couple of weeks off, completely, just to let the leg heal, and then I hired a strength coach. And that was the best thing I did, just to get my leg strong again, because I atrophied quite a bit on my left leg. As a matter of fact, I lost a whole muscle on the bottom of the quadricep.
Wow.
On the outside. So I don't have that anymore. So, so I had to, do it with what I had. So it all worked out.
It worked out. And so in 94, you win that race, and that you were the first non-American guy to win the Ironman World Championship. Now, obviously you'd had some sponsors leading in, but winning that race, how did that change your career?
Yeah, it changed it. It changed it a lot. I hadn't raced an Ironman in Europe. I got an offer to go to Europe and do a race over there, so I did. I went and did Ironman Germany the next year. I got a couple of new sponsors and things. I was riding on my soft ride there for 5 years, and it was incredible. I just loved that bike, and so I was with Saucony for a long time, 6 years of my career, and so no, it was really nice. But it did give me the options of choosing a few more races, the ones that I never went to before, and did that. But it really did change it. But I didn't want to change myself. I didn't want anything else to change, but to just go and be who I was, be true to that, and just enjoy the sport, because I think that you need to love what you do, right. First and foremost. Otherwise, it doesn't really work out.
So when I look at your career, I look from 89 to 99, and I see a guy who did basically 2 seasons a year, right? You'd come to the States and do our summer season, then you go back to Australia, these high intensity, fast races all during your summer in Australia. Basically, in 10 years, you had 20 seasons. That's a lot of racing. Was there a point during that where you felt like, I just need a break? This is just too much.
Yeah, it was 21 seasons back to back, because I never stopped. The longest time I had between races was 5 weeks in 22 seasons, 21 seasons. But yeah, coming home to do those races in Australia, man, they were the best races. And you've seen them. You can still watch them on YouTube. They're just absolutely incredible. But the first race, I'd have to give it a wash, because I would come off Ironman in October. I would take all of November off, and then, December, I'd do probably a short course race in Australia somewhere, or, a fun run or a half marathon, or, do something. And then it was the second week in January that we'd start up, the live TV series would start up in Australia. 5 races over, I think it was about an 8-week period, or 9-week period. In summer, we would do it with the Surf Life Saving series as well, what they call the Surf Ironman series. So it was 1 week the triathlete, 1 week the Ironman series. So, the summer of sport in Australia was just absolutely firing, at that time. And, most of Australians, they would know who all the triathletes are by their first and last names, and same with the Ironman people. So we were household names down there, and it was just fun. A lot of fun.
Talking besides Brad Bevan, Greg Bennett, Miles Stewart, you had
Chris McCormack.
Al Macca was in that series back then too. Yeah.
Spencer Smith.
Yes. And, did Crowe, was he a little later in that, or he was part of that as well?
He wasn't in it the first year or the second year, but I personally rallied to get Craig into the series, because we were training partners, and I said to these guys, I said, dude, this guy can keep up with us like on the run, like, you know, in training, and not many people can. And he's a great swimmer. He's a good biker, and he's a cheeky little bugger. And he'll do some talking in the group, you know, like Macca did and stuff.
He will.
Yeah, Crowie got into the series, and he did all right. I mean, he wasn't winning the races, but you always knew that he was going to be a long course athlete.
So 96, you're third. And when we move into what, to me, one of the most amazing races ever, 99, when you know something's wrong, right? You stopped during the swim, Ironman World Championship, and you have to like grab onto a board for a while because your heart was racing so fast.
Yeah, let me. I'm going to get back to that, Bob. I'm going to jump back to 96 and jump straight to 99, because 96 for me was a pivotal year. I was trying to do something that nobody had ever done before, and that's the Grand Slam. Nobody had ever won triathlon, the half, Ironman, and Olympic distance. Right. So my last shot at, you know, pretty much doing the long course, which was in Muncie, Indiana that year in 96, but I was up against Luke Van Leer, Spencer Smith. Everybody was there, right? And it was the prelude to Kona. It was 5 weeks before Kona, on a very, very hot and humid course in Muncie, Indiana, in the middle of summer, right? So incredibly humid. Luke Van Leer, Spencer Smith, and I, we had a knockdown. Like, we had a fight out there all the way to that finish line. I won, Luke second, Spencer third. Going into Kona in 96 was incredible. 96 in Kona, not only did Luke Van Leer win the race, but he broke the course record. Yeah, he went like 8:04, I think it was. Broke the record that stood for quite a few years. And Thomas Hellriegel in second. Here's the story of 96 Ironman. Yeah. We get up to Luke Van Leer and I were leading the race. We're at Kauai High. We turn right to start the 19 miles up. We look around. Luke says, Hellriegel's coming. And Hellriegel goes by us and looks around. He goes, you coming or not?
Hellriegel said that to you guys?
Yeah. And then Luke looks at me, he goes, you going? And I'm like, nope, you go. Luke got out of the saddle and sprinted like he was going up the Champs-Élysées on the 21st day of the Tour de France. Anyway, he goes with Hellriegel. I'm in no man's land until Jürgen Zach and Peter Reed catch me at Kauai High on the way back. So I was 38 miles on my own, going up the hill to get back onto the Queen K. Yeah. I go from my big chain ring to my small chain ring, and the bloody chain comes off and wraps around the crank. I'm back there for like 2 minutes trying to get this stupid thing back. All I had to do was unwind it. So I stretched it over, I got back on, but I had a stiff link all the way back. So I'm like, ding, 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 bang, ding, 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 bang. I catch back up to Jürgen Zach and Peter Reed on the bike from 2 minutes down, and I run into third place. And I personally, I think that was my best Kona race. And it was my fastest Kona race. Going into 99, I went to World Championships in Montreal, and this was the first day that I actually felt like there was something wrong with my body. I think it was a 2:00 start in the afternoon, so we had to have like about an 8 or 9 o'clock breakfast, and then just a little bit to, you know, right before the race. But I think I had like too many cups of coffee, and I was a little bit on the edge, and sort of felt like palpitations and whatever. And that was the first day it was the only day that I ever felt like there was something wrong with my body. Let's fast forward about 4 weeks. We go to Kona. And as you mentioned, Ben, I was in the swim around about, I think it was 20 minutes into it. We were just about to turn the first turning buoy. NBC boat right beside us, panning along, getting a beautiful shot. Tim de Boom, Luke Van Leer, Greg Welch, top three. We got a 40-yard gap, you know, over the rest of the field, swimming really well. And all of a sudden, my body just went numb. It was like, where did my breath go? I couldn't even breathe. And I was about to blank out, you know, pass out, because I went into ventricular tachycardia. But what I thought at the time, I thought I was having an asthma attack. So I just went to the lifeguard, and the lifeguard I ended up knowing, Michael McMichael, is the head of the lifeguards. I've known Michael for like 25, 30 years now.
Is that Loki's dad?
Yeah. Loki's
dad, yeah.
Yeah, Loki's dad. He's like, Greg, hey, you got to let go of the boat, mate. You've been here for like a minute or so. I said, I can't breathe. Michael, I can't breathe. He goes, mate, you got to let go or you got to pull out. So I let go. I did a little bit of backstroke, and all of a sudden I popped out of VTAC and I went back into the normal sinus rhythm. So I started swimming again. Anyway, long story short, it happened about 3 times on the swim where I had to stop for about 2 minutes at a time. I think I had a swim time that day of about 56
54.
minutes or something. 54.
54,
So I'm normally,
28.
I'm normally like a 49, 50 swimmer, 50, 51, something like that. And anyway, so I get out onto the bike ride thinking there's nothing wrong with me. And about 10 times, I actually had to get off my bike and put my head onto my handlebars and just try and breathe because I had no breath. So I was in ventricular tachycardia again, 3 times on the run, stopped at the top of Palani Hill. Chris Lee's father-in-law was at the top of the hill. He's a doctor. And I said, hey, Roger, he goes, you all right, Greg? You know, and I'm like, I don't know, something's going on and blah, blah, blah. So I feel good again. So I just took off. I ran from, I think it was like 45th, 60th, something like that, into 11th place.
246.
246, second fastest run of the day, and into 11th place. I was so mad. I finished in 11th place because I was 1 out of the money, but I almost died 15 times.
So after that, did you go to the hospital? I mean,
Did not go to the hospital. 1 week after, went to Xterra Maui, did the run again. I had all those problems and set the run record there. Then 2 weeks later, I had to go to Noosa because I was still number 1 in the world. And going into Sydney 2000, I wanted to keep that number 1 world ranking because I would have the choice of the pontoon, right?
With the voice on the pontoon. And but for our listener, for our watchers, this was going to be the first ever Olympic triathlon in Sydney, a course that you had won on, right? You'd won on that race course before.
Yeah, won the test event, won the World Cup there twice. So, and I was born 12 miles from the finish line. Yeah. So you know where I wanted to finish my career.
Absolutely.
So anyway,
so
I go down to Noosa, and it was the last race of the year, and I'm planning on racing, but during the week, I was waiting to race, and I was sitting on the couch, and I was in VTAC. Took my pulse, 265. I was just checking it for a few hours, and I was like, this is not right. So I actually hopped on a plane and went back to Sydney to go and see the cardiac doctors, and that was life of the triathlete, done, retired.
Right. And what did they tell you? I mean, obviously, there's when your heart rate's at 265 and you're an endurance athlete, there's something major.
Yeah, they told me it was a little dangerous to race with what I had. Ventricular tachycardia is probably the worst form of a heart problem that you can have because it's electrically induced, and therefore it's when it goes off, it's very violent. So it's a volatile thing that can happen. But my heart rate in Kona, Bob, I can tell you by the results of all my tests, which were the same feelings as what I had in Kona, was 320.
320.
Every time that happened that day, it was 15 to 18 times that I counted that day in Kona that happened. So I can just thank my lucky stars, and I'm very blessed that I'm still alive.
Well, the fact that you ran 246 and finished 11th overall while you're dealing with that?
And stopped 3 times.
That's unbelievable, Greg.
Yeah.
I mean, well, one, it is amazing you're with us.
Yeah.
And did they right away go, we need to put in a pacemaker, defibrillator? How long was that process?
After I was diagnosed, it was in December of 99, up in Los Angeles at UCLA Medical Center. I did a battery of tests. I did an endomyocardial biopsy. I did an angiogram. I did an electrical physiological study, which is where they do the ablation surgery.
Yes.
So there was 3 surgeries within a month. And then it didn't, the big surgery, which is the EP study, is where they map your heart and they try and find, where the scarring is, and they go in with a high frequency radio wave with a cold tipped catheter, and they try to burn, or ablate, the points of the heart which has been damaged. So they didn't really get all of it because they were saying it was sitting up a heart up against the lung, and if they missed it, it would be very, very dangerous. So go forward about 4 months, I was in Australia, and wasn't feeling that well at all. So yeah, it was year 2000 that I had 6 more EP studies done. It was just horrible. I had 2 done in a week because I'd come out of hospital and I was going back into VTAC all the time. So I was sitting around there for about a month. My heart rate was about 150, just sitting on the couch, and just couldn't do anything about it for like a month.
So when the Olympics comes to Sydney in 2000, and I remember looking around, and you're in the stands, and Greg Bennett's in the stands, and Brad Bevan's in the stands, and you're going, I thought this would be the team. A year ago, I would have said, these are the guys who are going to be representing Australia in the first ever Olympic triathlon. How hard was it for you to just be there watching?
I got over my issues really quickly because I knew that I was probably going to do the Olympics in Sydney, do Kona, and then call it a day.
Right.
And so I was very close to, the end anyway. So I got over it really quickly because I would rather live than die doing something, stupidly. And just, taking that, just making a bad choice. I didn't want to make a bad choice, and I wanted to have kids and a family and everything. So today I have 2 beautiful daughters, and it's just amazing. So I made the right decision. Yet to have Brad there, Brad had some real bad luck, going into the test event. He was hit by a car the day before, the selection race. And then Benno, he was the guy that was coming on. So we actually sent Craig Walton, who was probably the best swim biker that we've ever seen in Olympic history, I believe.
Yep.
And secondly, Peter Robertson, how's this? Peter Robertson had 1 shot. They said to him, go to New Zealand, do the Oceania Championships, and you have to win. He went to New Zealand. He won the race. He got onto the team. It's amazing. And then you had Miles Stewart. Miles finished 6th place. And so has it right now. Miles is the CEO of Triathlon Australia to this day. So that's incredible. And then our women's team was full of it was one disaster after the next. It was talks of a court case and all this sort of stuff around the selection and everything. But we sent a young team, Loretta Harrop, Nikki Hackett, which 2 with great swimmers. Loretta Harrop didn't have she never had a soft leg. She was good at all 3. But McKeely Jones, going away with the silver medal at the first medal event in the Olympic Games in 2000, right near where she was born too. So it was incredible. But I got to commentate, so that was icing on the cake.
Moving into that part of it, because obviously as an athlete, just being able to stay in the sport that you love, and you've been involved with Ironman, you've been involved with Oakley, you worked with ITU and the Olympic format as well. It seemed like you moved seamlessly from an athlete to a spokesperson and a commentator.
I looked at I didn't want to go back to doing what I was doing. It was hard physical labor.
Right.
And I really like being around a lot of people, and the industry, to me, I love sports. So it doesn't matter what sport it is. You can ask me a question about any sport. I probably know some sort of answer, but I'm just a sports jock. So I think I wanted to remain in the sporting industry, and I got lucky. Ironman picked me up that year in 2000. I've been an employee of Ironman since 2000. I've been there 20 years.
It's been amazing.
An amazing run. I've seen everything. It's been great. I've got such great friendships. I mean, you and I have been friends for 30 years, Bob. Yep. It's amazing. And, it's given me everything. So it fell into my lap. Very, very lucky.
Love that. Well, gee, thank you, bud. Always so good. And your health now?
Man, health is awesome. I'm doing so well. This morning I surfed for 2 hours with my oldest daughter, Annie. I went and played pickleball for 2.5 hours, and I'm talking to you. And now I'm going to go out for a bike ride and just have fun.
I love it. Greg Welch, you are
one of my favorites. We've got to get back on the speed golf course there, Bobby.
Hey, wait. Here we go.
Yeah, Gatorade. Kept me going. Hey, guess who took that picture? Lois Schwartz.
The greatest. Lois Schwartz took that photo.
And who was driving the motorbike?
John Smith.
Big Johnny. Yeah.
I love it. Hey, Greggy, thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking so much time. Always great to catch up with you.
You give that beautiful wife Heidi a big hug for me.
Greg Welch has been our guest again. We're brought to you by PTO, the Pro Triathletes Organization, by Amp Human, VeloFix, Normatec, Form Goggles, UCAN, our Challenged Athletes Foundation. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.